Ladies and gentlemen, my name is VTech Guy. I am here with Dane Winchester by birth, Brian King, Chris Mullins, and everyone's favorite, Uncle John. And we're talking about the XFL, the Extreme Football League, or as Vince would call it, the Extra Fun
Failure.
League. So, but me myself being a football fan for probably 2 months, um, I can't really speak too much about football, but I have two friends here today who know a lot about it. And I think me and Dane will take the first couple minutes. If John wants to plug in and just say something funny, then he can go also. But then the last stretch of this episode, I think, will really be Mullins and Mallon. But I'm gonna say, from my perspective and Dane's perspective, looking back 17 years of something that happened when I was 2 years old, and that you hear about one of Vince McMahon's greatest failures, because we have to really look at this from a perspective that all of us collectively are primarily wrestling fans. We really have that great idea of Vince McMahon can do anything. He won the Monday Night War against Ted Turner, and so you know it was his cockiness that got him into a war with NFL, basically. But NFL didn't even need to compete with him, if you think about it. He kind of
He
he
shot himself in the foot.
I would say
Yeah,
that,
he
but
jumped into a war he didn't need.
I think that and the NFL really didn't need to do anything because they weren't on television at the time of the XFL. It was right after the Super Bowl, of course. Um, it really he was competing with the SNL. He was competing to get off before the SNL would go on. He was competing with marketing in terms of having the
And
right
the general
people.
public.
Yeah, the general public. But of course, I think the world was changing at that point. We were moving away from that edgy scene uh, of reality based and stuff like that, and we were still edgy. You know what I mean? Because we had those edgy names, but it wasn't it wasn't the right progression. And of course, it really makes you think, like, what if the XFL would have lasted to 2002? Post 9/11, how the world changed
Yeah, what if
after
they
that.
what if they gave it a chance for a second year? Like, what if all of a sudden it boomed that second year?
Yeah, I think this is what I really personally feel looking at. Maybe this would have won over a lot of people. Maybe even growing up, it would have changed the way of the competition between this way of the NFL from this stretch of time period, from this season in the XFL season, to I think the greater goal uh, of Vince and at the time the NBC executive, it was Emerson
Dick Ebersol.
Eversole. I think their long term goal probably was to have this year round, that there would be no competition, that it would just be a revolving cast. I
Can
think
I
I
say
think
something?
shoot for it.
I think it was way too experimental for its time. I think that
Yeah.
people had gotten too into the formula of what NFL was.
Mhm.
And I think if this was tried maybe today, it would have a better chance. Obviously, the overly like scripted stuff wouldn't work,
Mhm.
but I think all the other ideas that he shot out were very different for the time that I think it would find an odd audience because there's all these like indie companies finding audiences because they're an alternative to
Yes.
the normal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was a thing at the time, and it still kind of isn't for football. So I
I
think it would
think
have been great today.
this is where I really caught on to the concept and was like, hey, I like this. It seems um, more brash, um, more entertaining,
Yeah,
and
it makes a sport that was already there, that already had popularity, and it
Even
brings
more
in another
popular.
demographic
it puts in the
of people who aren't
legitimacy.
necessarily like, because there's people who watched it strictly because of the fact that, hey, this is a WWE product, WWF at the time product.
Well, not only that, but the NBC product too of SNL, and you have two products. You have one which was really entertaining, and one
Yeah,
which
this was
was,
like the opening act for
sports
SNL
entertainment.
for that year, for
So
that 10
It's a
weeks.
Saturday night.
I think one reason why I started to like football a little bit in these last couple of
Because
months,
Greg Olson.
well, Greg Olson, of course, was the idea that some people were bigger than their jersey number. They had personality, and I think it really sums it up perfectly when you look at the man known as "He Hate Me."
Rod, he hate me smart.
Yeah,
Hate me.
he hate me. Of course, there was other great ones,
When I
but
run
as
it, he hate me.
Teabagger.
Vince, yeah, Teabagger was a great one. But as
Yeah, there
Vince
was
said,
Teabagger.
He Hate Me was supposed to be like the figurehead, the ace.
Yeah, he was
of
supposed to be the
everything.
ace for season 2. Like he was going to be
Yeah.
like I guess you would say the Peyton Manning of the XFL.
Poster
Yeah.
They were
boy.
going to put him all
Lord.
over everything.
Yeah, um, you know, it just makes you wonder. They really should have gave it, another. Vince McMahon definitely said at the end of the 30 for 30 on ESPN. Great hour and 30 minutes, by the way. I think it definitely a great look at this. He definitely says, if it was to come back nowadays, it could work. And I think it's definitely hinted and teased a little bit that they would try it, and it might be bold, but I think it could work a little bit, especially because they have that. Vince has the network though, which I think is something that
we gotta
17
look,
years
let's,
of
let's
build.
take a little bit of time to look at like the things that the XFL brought us that weren't in the traditional
NFL,
NFL,
the Sky
like
Cam, right?
and the whole like experience of the NFL. You
Yeah, that's
had
one
the
of the big
Sky
things.
Cam, which the NFL actually took that. The Sky Cam,
Yeah.
the NFL actually took that.
Mhm.
You had no coin toss. You had the whole opening run. What they said on the first one, what happened? Oh, the guy got hurt.
Yep,
He was out for the season.
yep. A lot of guys got injured that way. They said.
A lot of guys got really hurt doing that. They
Yeah.
had where they went to the locker rooms of the cheerleaders at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
Like
What
they
were
had the
doing there.
announcers had personalities.
I
They
think
had
they just trash talk.
dating.
They trash talk the NFL too much, and I think this
Yeah,
is
that's the thing is Vince. They took you could even tell like at the beginning of this whole documentary, you could tell like because they were showing clips of Vince like hyping
Mhm.
this thing up at their press conference for it. And the one thing that really got me is literally everything out of his mouth was, "Hey, NFL does this. We're
The
gonna
no
do
fun
this
league."
to make it better." Like he called him no
Yeah.
fun league. He's like, "Well, some people just are afraid to go certain places."
It's very
He
Ted
wouldn't-
Turner WCW like, which is the odd thing.
Yeah, the funniest part is this. It seems very much so like he basically ripped off the Eric Bischoff handbook on, hey, how am I gonna mess with my competition a little bit? They're the bigger giant, but how am I gonna mess with them a little bit and rattle their feathers?
And I think the key thing is that if the XFL would have failed on its own, not given, I will say in defense of Vince, for the most part, everything looked like it was good. Everything kind of played out right. From what they said, that this was really, they had some interesting games. Of course, the commentary, stuff like that. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. But when you look at the blimp, all right, like you can't really explain the blimp.
Crashed,
The
the blimp crashed into the seafood restaurant.
Generators not being fueled. Getting
What's crazy
Jennifer
is actually
Lopez
like the one thing
angry,
that
stuff
really
like
got
that.
me on the conversation. One thing that really got me was his original idea was just he was going to buy the Canadian Football League and move it south to the United States
Mm-hmm.
because they actually had approached him about buying one of their teams, and he's like, well, you know what, I might buy the whole league.
Well, it's not only that; it's
Those Canadians probably got really scared.
I think Vince just wanted to compete with the next layer of people, but I think
Do you think that if it would have continued, Vince could have been bigger than the NFL?
I think if Vince waited a couple years, because
I think if Vince like took a notch down on his pride and did the whole like they wanted to move this from Saturday nights to Saturday afternoons, which isn't bad because it's still Saturday, still people are off work. Like
You're
so,
still
if
gonna
he
get
would've-
the views.
if he would have taken that, this thing could have gotten even bigger. Like, and the thing is, like, they started with 8 teams. They could have started expanding which means maybe a longer season. As Tech alluded to, maybe an all-around season. Who knows?
Well, yeah, I
And
think also Vince
what I
at the
really
time was
like that
still
they
at
did
the
though,
war with WCW. Like as
yeah.
of the
So he had other
XFL,
things to worry about too.
he was still technically at war with WCW. And if he would have waited really until that was over, and I think because he was spending a lot of money to not
He might have not had
get
the money
his
to buy
wrestling,
WCW.
his whole wrestling lineage killed. I think that's what really would have helped him.
What they did
You
is
know,
they played this very smart, where they had half the league was in the four biggest markets in the U.S. They had the New York, New Jersey team, they had Chicago, Southern California with Los Angeles, and then they had San Francisco area with the Demons. And then they put the four other teams and teams that didn't have NFL teams. Never had NFL teams. You got Birmingham, you got Memphis, you got Orlando, and Las Vegas.
Well, Las Vegas is
He,
getting a team now.
well,
it's
that's
2017.
now
Yeah,
2017.
that's
We're talking
17
about
years ago.
at this point when, like, you couldn't pay to have a team want to move to Vegas just because all the issues that every critic would talk about a team moving there.
They only had 8 teams.
8 teams. Yep.
Yeah, there was only 8 teams. Each team played 10 games.
So here comes the big finale question for everyone. It was teased at the end when they had their dinner. Of course, we can get into some small stuff where, like, Jesse Ventura would egg on some of the coaches, that players would be egged
Yeah,
on. A lot, F-bombs were kind of encouraged, and
yeah, that's what they
very
said. They said
risky
don't do
stuff
it every
with the
word, but
females.
like you can say it, but just don't make it every word.
Yes, and I think with the tease at the end when they're eating, and Vince for the first time of many, of course people will say that Vince doesn't necessarily admit defeat too much. He is at the end, he was like, oh, it's my fault, and that was a bombshell. As a wrestling fan, you really don't see Vince take the L and say, hey, this was my fault. But I think him admitting that is a step towards maybe
Success.
well, not just that, because he's a very successful man in general, but I think realizing that, hey, if he didn't rub off some people the wrong way 17 years ago, if he was to approach this in a different aspect, could he bring the XFL back? What do you guys think?
I would like to say yes, but frankly, I believe with the size that the NFL has actually turned into, compared to when the XFL was getting started and how big of a market it's become, I don't think it would be worth putting all that money into.
My thing is they shouldn't compete with the NFL if they come back. Like, that shouldn't be their goal, is to be bigger than the NFL. If they want to be their own thing, then it might work. But if they try to be NFL, it's not going to work.
They need
It's
to be
not
their
going to
own
work because
product.
at the end of the day, the NFL works because it's been there forever. They've gone through everything. Like, you can't
Like why
just be
the
like, hey,
WWE
we're going to
works.
start and we're going to be great. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why
it's
WWE's
why
the
WWE
top dog,
lasted.
because it's been around forever. It's always going to be around.
But not every wrestling company tries to be WWE, and that's why some of
Exactly.
them
That's
work.
some
That's
of
why I
them
watch
fail because they
TNA.
try that.
Yeah, you want to have that alternative product. But I think that this is the weird aspect between a professional wrestling company, where there's different products, and
Sports
a,
entertainment.
a football league. Like, there's not too much you can change, but what they did change was very revolutionary, very
It was the
alternative.
literal definition of sports entertainment.
Yeah, and it was, it was very risky. I think we'll say that, to cap everything off. But in the end, though, I liked it. The 30 for 30 was great. I don't know about you guys,
Definitely.
but
Definitely, like I'm a big fan of these in general. I always try to catch them if I feel like it's an interesting story. There's been quite a few that I just really was like, I really want to watch that, and I'll watch them, and they never fail to amaze me, never disappoint me.
But yeah,
Definitely like one of my favorites.
we'll have to just take it by ear. Take it, if this, 30 for 30 does great, we might see an XFL too. Who
Vince
knows?
and his best friend get together.
Yeah, who knows? Till next time, everyone. Keep it safe. He hate me.
Tight.